Thanks, Hima, for joining me today for the 16 Weeks Coffee Chat series. How's it going?
No, it's going well. Thank you. It's a good, nice weekend out here in Vancouver. I was just telling you guys earlier, good weather today, a lot of sun. So just one of those weekends where the weather lightens up your mood. But how about yourself?
Nice. Yeah, I'm pretty good. Yeah, finally getting a bit of time to like relax during the weekend, so that's good. Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome.
cool. So I guess tell me a bit about like your background, like what you're doing career-wise, how'd you get started there?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Hima. I'm in my final year at the University of British Columbia at the Vancouver campus. I actually grew up in Bombay in India. That's where I'm from. But I
Bye.
also did my high school in Singapore before heading over to Vancouver. So been around the place a little bit and just enjoyed all parts of it. And I chose to come to Canada just because it was a new experience for me. And also because I really wanted to find a program where I could tap into different sides of me, which we'll talk about soon. But UBC's business school happened to have one of those programs, which are very limited across the world. And that's how I chose Vancouver. And in terms of my background or what I'm studying at UBC, I'm studying business and computer science, a combined major in those fields. And I've completed two co-op terms so far, waiting on my third one to happen this summer. So I was at Scotiabank and then I was at Lululemon, and I'll be at Deloitte over this summer as a business analyst. And I'm hoping to graduate end of this year. I think I've been in school long enough now, enjoyed every moment of it, but I'm also excited to see what the future holds.
Cool. That's really sick. Um, yeah, so during your like previous co-op terms that you talked about,
Mhm.
what did your like kind of day-to-day responsibilities look like?
No, that's a good question. And I think I'll lead that question by maybe quickly talking about what my role was. So at Scotiabank, I joined the strategic pricing team as an analyst. So what my role essentially was that I had to put together a bunch of data that they've given me and do analysis to find new ways of pricing their products so that they can make more money. And this was in light of the market changing due to COVID. So I joined the team. I was the only co-op slash intern on the team. Everybody else was fairly older, fairly senior in their positions. And my day to day was essentially waiting for new business objectives or new business problems to come through, and then find ways of finding strategy or applying the business strategy to find new ways of pricing the products. And that's essentially what I did at Scotiabank. So my day to day was a lot around Excel. I think that's where I lived for the 4 months that I was in the internship program. And my second co-op was at Lululemon as a retail technology strategy intern. So in this role, it was a bit of two different projects that I was working on. One was, again, more data driven, so finding inefficiencies in their management methods of certain things in store. And we had to find a way to quantify that and also figure out where we're bleeding money so that we can improve it and have a better performance in the future. And the second was away from all this technical stuff and a little bit more of strategic thinking and market research. So in the long term, in the next 3 to 5 years, how is Lululemon going to communicate with their customers or guests, as they call them? So my day-to-day was a mix of living at Excel or Smartsheets. That's what Lululemon used. So I used to dabble around a lot with data. And the other part used to be very meeting oriented. So talking to people, putting together a lot of information and also making a lot of PowerPoints. So yeah, that's what my day-to-day looked like. I enjoyed uh, both those co-op positions a lot, just because I think, just like my degree says, I like being involved in the tech, but I also like doing a lot of the business strategy and objective stuff. So it gave me a good mix of both. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, that's really interesting. So do you think like you're more interested in like business roles within like tech like environments, if that makes sense? Or like are you maybe interested in trying more like pure tech like positions as well? Or like do you have a preference?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think my preference lies in what you said first, which is applying business in a tech context. So, and in a tech context, sorry, it doesn't just mean that you're working for a tech company. It could mean that the way you arrive at those business objectives or the way you satisfy those business objectives has a tech component to it. So at both Scotiabank and Lululemon, I wasn't necessarily writing lots of code, and I wasn't really building any product that they offer. Right? Scotiabank is a bank, and I have zero financial like knowledge to be building a financial product. And at the same time, Lululemon has their products already. So what I really was doing is leveraging the technical skills that I have to turn whatever raw data they have or whatever thought process they have into something tangible, something that they can use to make decisions in the future. And I think that's something I really enjoy, because the way I see tech as something that has incredible amounts of potential, whether you're talking about Web 2.0 and data, big data, or you're talking about Web 3. I think there's a lot of potential, and ultimately it's the way I like to think of tech is that tech exists for people and not the other way around. So I just really enjoy applying tech in the context of either solving people's problems or organizations' problems. And hopefully, with how my career turns out in the future, that's something I'd be doing for a long time.
Cool. That's sick. So I know you like talked a lot about like Excel and like things like that. Are there any other like tools, technologies that you found really valuable in the field?
Yeah, good question. So Excel definitely, I think regardless of what position you're going into, whether you're someone who's going into a very communications or organization kind of job, or specifically those, whether you're going to tech, whether you're a developer, I think it's very important to have a basic foundational understanding of Excel. I think that will just really help, because a lot of organizations still use it. And Excel is also a very simple tool to organize a lot of information, and also plug and play a lot of stuff, pull it apart to find if you want to find any insights. I think Excel is something that I would really recommend a lot of students to learn as soon as they can. You don't have to be an expert at it. There's thousands of like internet resources, so just enough that will allow you to say, I'm comfortable with Excel and I can learn whatever you ask me to do. Outside of it, I'd say everything else in the Microsoft Office suite is a very powerful skill to have. In fact, companies at this point, from the resume roast that I've done at my podcast channel or the conversations I've had with recruiters, companies just expect you to know the Microsoft Office suite. So Word, PowerPoint, specifically Excel. So I would say that make sure that you're getting enough experience in those, and so that by the time you're applying for co-ops, once they tell you, hey, let's get the work started, you're not entirely confused with what needs to be done, and you get a lot of space for yourself to figure out the rest. And specifically for the lines that I'm going into, so if you're somewhere in business tech or on the tech side of things, so Jira is a powerful tool to know as well. So it's a way people assign jobs and tickets to each other. So they assign tasks. And if you know how to write Jira tickets and you know how to organize them, I think it'll vastly improve your organization skills. And at the same time, the company will recognize that, oh, hey, this person uses Jira. We've been using Jira or something like Jira for a long time. So getting them onboarded into our process wouldn't take too long. So those are some technologies that I think are super powerful. Obviously, the more, the better. But at the same time, if I can just make a quick comment, I would also say that having a ideal profile or an ideal candidate profile is not about knowing all the technologies and knowing them super well. It's about showing that you know a few of them, but you're also very good at learning things quickly and very well. So one way to show that is by getting involved in projects or getting involved in hackathons where you really have like 24 hours to learn something and put something together. So besides just knowing these skills, I would also highly recommend finding ways to display or demonstrate that you're someone who's a very quick learner.
Oh, that's great. That's really good to know. Yeah. So I guess back to like what you enjoy and like your preferences, like what do you find like the most enjoyable about working in your field?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll take it back to what I said earlier, right? I think tech exists for people and not the other way around. So I really like leveraging what a piece of technology can do. So whether that's a programming language or whether that's SQL or Excel, I really like using what it can do to solve problems that otherwise seem too big to tackle or too abstract, right? So for example, I'll give the example of one of the projects I did at Lululemon, which is they buy a lot of hardware that they want to use in stores, right? So it could be the mobile phones or it could be scanners. Now they had a way of managing it, but they didn't really know how efficient that was, or it wasn't, right? So now that sounds like a very abstract problem to solve. Like, how do you quantify efficient management of hardware devices? Like, how do you think about that, right? So now we know that we have something called Excel. We have a way to gather data. We have a way to analyze data. You come up with a few metrics, right? So you can be like, okay, what's the cost of a hardware device? What's the lifetime cost of hardware device, including what we're paying for it, plus repair costs and all of those things. So we've developed metrics, and we've then gone ahead and gathered data from different parts of the organization and done an analysis on what this metric behaves like over 1 year or 2 years, and in the context of Lululemon's costs. Right now, that is something that's super cool because it takes something like an abstract problem, which is hey, we don't know if we're efficient at managing our hardware. And it puts it all into one single spreadsheet where you can mess around with that data to find what you're looking for, right? Or maybe find what you didn't expect to see, but you saw it there. So it's just one of those examples where business problems have always existed, just the ways we can solve them have changed. And all the tools that I've had experience with are a way of doing that. And I'm sure those tools will improve, they'll evolve, and there'll be new ones. But that's something that I really enjoy. I think in part, like I slightly geek out over the tech, like, oh, what is this supposed to do? Like, it's so cool that it can do this, it can do that. But obviously the importance of a tool or the value it brings depends on how good is it in translating something that is super raw and something that is abstract into something substantial and of business value. So that was a long-winded answer of saying that I just enjoy geeking out over what tech can do and finding ways in leveraging that tech into solving business problems.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective. Cool. I think another thing I'd love to know is like as a new hire, like especially as an intern, like how can interns make like a strong impact within a team?
Yeah, and before I answer this question, I'll just preface it by saying that I've only done a couple of co-ops, so now I think I've done like 3 internships so far. So what I'm saying is not necessarily the gospel truth of how to be like a good intern or a good new hire. I'm learning on the go as well, but what I'm about to say is what I've experienced myself and what I've heard from other people who've interned for like years before me. I think when I first started doing internships, the perspective I had and the perspective a lot of students have, especially for their first ever internship, is that I have to go there and do the best work possible, right? So if they hire me as an analyst, I have to do the best analysis they've ever seen, right? I have to be the best at Excel, best at XYZ, whatever you call it. But once I started working, I realized that they don't necessarily expect you to put in the best work. Like, sure, that's a bonus. That's a great thing if you're amazing at what you do. But what they really want to see is how well do you fit within the culture? And I'll define that. I know that's a bit generic. So first and foremost, do you really have the attitude to learn? Right? So when you're going into a company as an intern, the expectation of you is not just to get the work done. They expect you to be very involved with what that team is doing and learn not just how to get the work done, but also why does that team exist? What's their purpose? What is inspiring them? What makes them get up every day and solve the problems that they are? And when they see that you're curious and you want to learn what the team is doing, they really appreciate that. And that's something that leaves a lasting impression on them, other than just maybe one amazing Excel spreadsheet you made during the 4 months you were there. And I say that because at both of my co-ops, something that I noticed was that every time I was not afraid to show that, hey, I'm curious, I just want to know, and ask quote unquote stupid questions, which there's nothing like stupid questions, but every time I asked those questions, they really appreciated it. And I noticed that it's because they cared to see that this student who's just come out of nowhere into this organization probably doesn't have enough context, is now keen enough to actually understand what's happening here. And what the way companies see it is that if you're invested in what the company or the team is doing, you'll be invested in the output. And therefore your quality of work will be great, but at the same time, you'll be a more well-rounded learner and a well-rounded intern. And the benefit it has for the candidates is that one, spending that time really trying to understand the organization and the team and being curious and asking a lot of questions gives you a good understanding of where you are, right? What kind of organization you're in. Maybe you don't want to be in something like this before. Maybe this is the perfect place for you to excel. And secondly, it allows you to be good at your job. And what that will translate to at the end of the 4 months or however long your internship is that they'll want you to come back. They'll say, hey, you know what? You were amazing. You were curious, you were good at your job. We want you to come back, whether that's a full-time or whether that's another co-op. Or if nothing, it will be a great piece of reference for you when you go into your next position or the next adventure you're trying out. So I guess, again, to concise what I just said, being a new hire, being a good new hire is about having the curiosity and the interest to actually understand the team that you're working with and what they're doing, and reaching out to people inside and outside of your team to just ask as many questions as you have, because that really shows that you're someone who cares about what's being done. And they want to know that, because you could be half as good as someone else in the market. There's obviously always someone who can do something better than you when it comes down to the task. But where you can really stand out is show that, hey, I care about being here, and I care so much that regardless of how tough it will be, I'll figure out a way to do it. And I think that's really what companies look for.
Cool. Yeah, that's great to know. Yeah, so you are a content creator. You founded the UBC podcast. So what kind of questions related to co-ops or careers do you usually get asked? And like, I guess what's the most common advice that you give?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think given that recruitment season was at full upswing in the last like 3 to 4 months, a lot of students want to know, hey, how do you have good coffee chats, right? I think that's usually what it comes down to, because a resume or a cover letter, you can do your best at tailoring it, but ultimately it could be a hit or miss just because a recruiter is spending 6 seconds looking at your resume. So, it really depends on what they're thinking about at that time, and maybe just the subtle changes. But I think a lot of times I've gotten questions around, how do I have good coffee chats? How do I network with people so that when I'm applying, I could get a referral, or I could just know enough people in the company? And something that I always tell people, and this is something I'm continuously doing as well, is that it's a game that you have to play over the longer term, right? So it's not about, there's an internship opening in May, the application closes in 2 weeks, I need to talk to someone within these 2 weeks and get them to give me a referral. It's really not that, although that would really help, right? So what actually has to happen is you think about, okay, I find this company very interesting. They're hiring for a very cool internship position, which I know they will hire for again, hopefully. If not, they'll hire for full time. And there's tens and hundreds of companies like that. So you make a list of the companies or the fields that you're really interested in, and then you go ahead and talk to the people, and you just talk to them. You ask them questions. Again, be curious, right? Like, what do you do? What do you like about what you're doing? Kind of like the questions you asked me today, right? What do you like about what you're doing? Where do you see this team going? What challenges are you facing at work right now? And how do you think a student could add value? These are all great questions to ask. And when you play it over the longer term, you'll realize that you're less stressed about trying to have as many coffee chats as possible, and you're more interested in finding out, what do I really like, and what kind of companies are in that perfect intersection of, I can add a lot of value and I also like them a lot, so it's a great fit for me to be here. So that's something that I tell students a lot of times, just play the longer game. It's very hard. It's very hard to play the longer game. And I know that maybe for students like you and me, it's easier for us to say it because we've interned a couple times. So we've like been there, done that. But for a lot of students who are starting out first, it can be a tough piece of like strategy to follow, but it will really pay dividends in the long term, up until the point or even beyond full-time opportunities. So play the long game, have as many coffee chats as possible, but think about quality and be intentional about who you're talking to and why you're talking to them.
Cool. Yeah, nice. Good to know. I just have like a fun question before we like start wrapping up, but what's an artist or a band that you always recommend when someone asks for music recommendations?
Oh, that's a great question. So unfortunately, my taste in music isn't so great that people ask me for recommendations.
That's okay.
Yeah, usually I just my playlist is all over the place, but a band that always comes to mind for me is really one of the only bands that I ever like hardcore fanboyed over, and that's Green Day. So they're not I don't think they produce music anymore, but it was really one of the earliest, like my first rock bands that I'd ever heard. So every time someone talks about bands, that's the first thing that comes up, and I always bring it up in that conversation like I did just now. So I would still recommend anybody to listen to Green Day. They're old, but their music is still really good. But outside of that, if not for a band or genre that I recommend to people, is listening to grime. It's something that I like. UK grime basically is, I really enjoy their music, so I've been listening to it for like a year or so now. Partly because like my girlfriend listens to it, and I discovered it because I love soccer as well, so the culture like gets mixed up in there somewhere. But yeah, that's something I recommend. I think it's a good alternative to just, if you're just listening to rap and hip hop all the time, I think grime can give you a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely listen, check it out. But yeah, those are basically all the questions I have for you today. Do you have any like further advice for the viewers and for just like people who are looking into getting into the technology field?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed being here today as well. And Lisa, I think you asked great questions, and hopefully the responses I had helped students out. But a piece of advice that I guess is that we tend to think that the industry, or the tech industry, or any industry for that matter, right? Whether you talk about consulting or product management or any of these fields that have the hype backing them, we tend to think that it's a zero-sum game, which is, if someone else gets the opportunity, that means I didn't get it. Or if someone else landed a consulting gig at Deloitte, I didn't get it this time. Or if somebody ended up at Meta or Microsoft, I didn't get it. But it's really not. I think companies are always on the lookout for great talent. Always, right? They're expanding, especially the big ones. They always want new people to bring in fresh ideas and want to join their organization. And as a student, I think the greatest asset we all have at this stage in our lives is our ability to learn new things quickly and our ability to learn a lot of things, right? So as you grow older, we start to develop like a specialty, right? Like you meet people who are 10 years in the industry, maybe what they're good at is like they're really good at organization. So they're really great project managers, right? Maybe they're really good at strategy. So they're like in the C level, like executives at some company. So as you grow older, we'll start to pick our own niche. But when we're young, I think we have the advantage of learning a lot of things and learning them quickly. And I think that that's really what is the fun part about being in this like age, especially in today's day and age where learning new things is there's tons of resources. So the advice I would give is that don't limit yourself. If you like something a lot and you want to pursue it, go for it. But just know that there's a sea of opportunities out there. And just because someone is landing that opportunity doesn't mean you can't, right? There's plenty of opportunities for you in plenty of fields. So don't ever restrict yourself. I've seen people in my friend group who've come from non-traditional like business or tech backgrounds land consulting gigs or land product management gigs. So there's really no cookie cutter way of landing the dream job or landing a position you're looking for. And competition is great. It makes you a better version of yourself. But again, it's not a zero-sum game. So if you see someone doing better than you, go ahead and talk to them. Figure out what they're doing so well that you could do better. And ultimately, the result of that will be that you both will grow because they'll learn something from you as well, and not just a one directional flow of information or tips or guidance. So yeah, I guess the tip I'd give, it makes me sound really old saying this, but I guess the general tip is just that we have a lot of time and a lot of resources. And I think it's best to continue to explore because the world is changing and we just never know what we might really enjoy doing or what we might really be good at doing.
Very true. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I definitely learned a lot, so I hope everyone watching also learned something today. But yeah, thank you for coming and chatting.
No, I really appreciate being on here as well. So to you and to the whole 16 weeks team, I appreciate being given this opportunity. I think not just this chat, hopefully students find it useful, but there's tons of other like conversations and information that students can get from the 16 weeks channel. So I would definitely recommend students to like subscribe and tune in and get all those updates. And while you're there, also give a quick follow to the UBC podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, yeah, thank you so much.
No, this was great. Thank you.